Well, I think I found my funny rattle or rash. It's a clutch. So what we have here is some generations. 1950s era Lionel F3, right? And that was one of the original versions, the 2344. And that's Lionel FT from the late 90s, early 2000s. It's got sound, so maybe it's a little later than that. But that's obviously a completely different shell, completely different design with two vertical cans. And that is one of their 027 entry-level sets. I think they're a good deal. You know, they've made those for a bunch of years. The FTs are around, and they run good. And, of course, they come with a variety of different options, right? When Lionel actually failed as a company in 1969, of course, there was turmoil in the marketplace, and Williams, well, they filled the gap for a long time, and this is an earlier Williams. I guess it's an F7 versus an F3. Take a look at the radiators on it. Yeah, that's got the earlier Williams two vertical cans, but it doesn't have the flywheels, right? It runs pretty good. And but it's different. It's very obviously different. Here, let me take this one and put it up on the upper track. I don't really know why, but I've always preferred the Lionel look and feel over the later Williams. I don't know if it's because of the deer in the headlight look with the big open windshields versus that, hey, I'm mean, I'm going to bust your tail kind of look. But there's something about that 1950s into the 1960s era Lionel that just looked rugged. And of course they were in real life. But you know something, so are these. They've lasted and certainly passed the test of time as well. That's a testament right there. I've actually got 3 more of those. The first one I got was several years back, and I was just not impressed. And I know now the reason it wasn't pulling very hard was the traction tires were pretty much done. But they run well. Anything Williams from that period may not be the most accurate looking thing, but the drive line they had was pretty rugged. And so it's really hard to compare them. It really is. I prefer these, but I sure appreciate these and how smooth they operate. Yeah, they scale a little closer. And in real life, I don't know what the differences are. But in terms of just the look and feel on the model trains, those Lionel FTs, in my mind, pick up where these left off. Both in price point. Of course, they perform better. Of course, that's also a matter of opinion. But that's progress. But I guess the point is, Lionel was ahead of their time, with these. I think this is like the pinnacle of their engineering. Maybe the big steamers, but I still think these are about as good as it got for Lionel in their heyday. And I don't really know whether or not the new modern stuff has really captured the feel that these created. And I find myself gravitating to them even now. And believe me, I can have anything I want. I just think those are really cool. So, I think the problem with these cars is I've been spoiled. This is an MTH branded, and it's a Madison, Pennsylvania. And they're just nice, from the wire rails to the rubber, I don't even know what you call that, but boot there. A little bit of detail underneath. And even though they're plastic side frames, the trucks are pretty well done. And actually, those are die-cast. I was wrong. That is not plastic. So even that is a higher quality car than this one right here. Maybe the reason why they didn't put a label on it is they were not really proud of what they produced. I don't know. MTH most certainly is proud of what they produce, and there's a good reason for it. So there's my humble opinion on that. I think I'm just going to let these go away and then find another, group of MTH passenger cars to pull around behind these locomotives. I've got the MTH New York Central Madison set, and I'm building a set of the Pennsylvanias. I really like those. So anyway, train run time. No, that's probably an event that never happened. New York Central, Baldwin Sharks pulling a passenger train. But Pennsylvania, they actually did buy these things with the intent to pull passenger trains. The early ones, not these. These were the freight versions, so that's also an event that probably never happened. But I like my Sharks. I think they're cool. And this is a Williams on the upper track and a Weaver set up on the lower track. And I think the Weaver, in my mind, looks a little better. You know, I like the wire handrails, detail, stuff like that. And, of course, here's a Williams F7. Now, other than the side frames, the basic drive line between those two is about the same. And, of course, back to Lionel, a little switcher. So there's my Sunday before the store train run. I still have not decided what I'm going to bring down to the store for my Sunday train run. I think they're going to be doing more layout type things anyway, so maybe a lesser load of trains to go down there and run is probably appropriate.
Eliminate it and not worry about it. Like I've got enough stuff up in my house to make it framework. Where? This may give you a better idea.
It was a 16-foot right in but the section was like,
Place that on Facebook? Yeah. Where the engine's in the middle?
Alright, so what do you want now?
What do you got going on here, and what's that goofy looking thing?
That's the base 3. It basically makes all of your non-Bluetooth. I think it's one of the hassle with
I now understand the Lionel system.
Good test with that.
It's actually really clever. And to make a synapsis, it actually is using radio frequency transmissions and to communicate commands. It's not doing an analog to a track at all. And that's why they have it connected up to the common side here. That's like super cool. But also, that's also why if you have like wire mesh in your mountains and stuff like that, you got to attach it to the common or the ground, because it now becomes an antenna as well, or it blocks transmissions to the train on the other side of the mountain. Each locomotive has an ID, and in base it'll be an ID, so it can transmit radio frequency commands to the specific ID in question. Spent some time down at the Leonard's hobby store. The Cortland Model Train Club has their meeting on Sundays, and I usually go down there anyway, but today was one of the meetings. And there was a fellow there who really understands the Lionel system of communicating with their locomotives. So I have a better understanding than I did before. And I think it's pretty cool. It's kind of interesting. It's a 1990s technology, but of course they've enhanced it and developed it to a much higher level now. But the crux of the differences between it and some of the other systems is, instead of modulating the waveform from the positive side of the transformer, it's using a radio frequency style of communication where it transmits from the common outer rails and whatever's attached to the common, whether it's a mesh or a fence or the outer rail, whatever it is. That's an antenna. The locomotives have a little receiver which receive the signal, and they have an ID, and basically the protocol is the command base can assign a transmission to a specific ID, and the specific ID can recognize that transmission's for it. And that's how you can have multiple locomotives on the same layout being controlled by this command base system. And I think that's really clever. And it creates a couple of dilemmas for me, because in order to run those locomotives, you have to have that whole system. It's pretty expensive. And Lionel also has a Bluetooth app where you don't need that, where basically the Bluetooth connects directly to the locomotive and using the Bluetooth as the communication protocol. And that pretty much eliminates the need of having the command base and all that stuff associated with. So there's your dilemma. Do you just go straight to the Bluetooth and, you know, if you're going to spend a lot of money on expensive locomotives, just do that? Or do you have the command-based system so you can handle the older Lionel locomotives? And it can also obviously be, used in the new ones as well. A little bit of redundancy, but it kind of creates a little bit of a overlap and a dilemma for those people in the Lionel world, I'm sure. Of course, the other one for me is how do you mesh that with MTH and those systems, and you really can't. They're really not. No, they're really not even related. They're completely different systems, different communication protocol, and to the extent that the MTH can emulate the older Lionel, modulated waveforms. Yeah, that's cool, but it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the radio frequency command style of communication at all. MTH doesn't have that. I suspect that combination of proprietary technology and copyrights and stuff like that, they really can't. So the overlap is not something that's as, just the right word, all-encompassing as I would have expected, because there's such a complete difference in the protocol used and the transmission technology used. And so there's your dilemma. Which way do you go? And, with the old conventional stuff, Lionel, Marks, early Williams, K-Line, and some of these even modern ones that have the ability to run off the conventional changing voltage in the track. I mean, if you're at that level and the only thing you care about is a horn, noise, like the engine noise and stuff like that, who cares? But if you're into actually controlling the locomotive remotely on your layout, you're going to have to pick your poison and stick with it, unless you've got a lot of money and a lot of time. And I think over this next year, I'm going to settle on one or the other. Now, my son is trying very hard to get me to buy a legacy Lionel locomotive that would work with the command-based system. It doesn't have Bluetooth, where he has the same SD70 with the Bluetooth, and yeah, you can see that. So, I don't know. Fortunately for me, simple things for simple minds. I'm happy with my conventional stuff. So let me just do a lap and we'll call this a video. And I've got a lot to think about based on that visit to the local store and the model club today. It's a regular winter wonderland. Yeah, that's the farm road. Seems like it held up pretty good. Still waiting for them to come get those logs. They bought them. Nice load. Yeah. Bringing up firewood out of the woods. Pulling the lesser logs. I have a bunch of trees that I can just drop and sell for firewood. I may start doing that if that pile doesn't go away pretty quick.